Hi everybody, it's Tariq and I am so excited to make this video and tell you about the Hasselblad 205FCC. This is my favorite film camera in the world. And it's a very rare camera. Not many people know much about it, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about it today and talk about film photography. So the Hasselblad 500 series, those have been the workhorses of the Hasselblad Victor system. And the 200 series were not used as often. So if you are a photographer or you're not a photographer, I think this video is for everybody. For really high level, the 500 series Hasselblad cameras had the shutter built into the lens, so that was a leaf shutter that would open and close in the lens. The 200 series cameras had a focal plane shutter right in front of the film, very much like an SLR camera or a digital SLR would have in front of the sensor. So that's at a high level. Another high level thing I want just for the non-photographers to know, and even for photographers, is in film days, 35mm was pretty much the de facto standard of film, and that was a 24mm by 36mm film size, negative size. And medium format meant you had a larger negative, and 6x6 meant about a 56mm by 56mm size negative. So that comes out to about 2.5 times in square area the size of the 35mm camera. And the advantage of that is that you can have larger prints made and you can get more detail. There's other unknown advantages that many people didn't think about, which is you have more light coming in and you have larger lenses. More light coming in is a big advantage. So that's at the medium format camera. Another high level definition is if you want to take that up to another level to the 4x5 large format or 8x10 format cameras, they had even more light coming in and a larger basically negative to record everything. So medium format was right in between. Generally speaking, back in film days and also today in the digital world, if you are taking a lot of pictures and fast, whether it is weddings, corporate events, sporting events, or just on the go, 35mm, that handheld is pretty much what you're going to use for most things. It might be the most versatile format that professionals can use and consumers. When you get into the medium format, you get to the larger size cameras, whether film or digital. Now you're moving into the category of whether it is fine art or you are doing portraits or landscapes. It's going to slow down the process of your taking the pictures. It's just inherent in these formats. And when you go to large format, you're really slowed down a lot. You really have to know you intend to take a picture of a certain thing. So all the size formats, whether film or digital, have their places. And I was looking for videos on the Hasselblad 205FCC and I couldn't find any. I realized I have a Hasselblad 205FCC, so I should make a video on it, and I'm excited to make this. This idea has been in my mind for several months. And I only wanted to make one video, and that one video was going to be on this camera. So that started months ago. I had several technical delays, and I'll talk about some of them. So I ended up making some other videos, but this is where my heart was set. And the thing that distinguishes the 205FCC from other cameras is its metering system. It has a spot meter that is 100% of the metering for it, and it is right in the center of the frame. And other camera systems have other metering systems. They have center weighted average meters, and some other matrix type meters. So this is not a camera that is for everybody, but it is the top film engineering 6x6 camera I think Hasselblad ever made, and I think it would be easy to argue ever made in the world. So I think everybody should know about it. Its possibly nickname was the spot meter because of that metering system. It only had a spot meter, and this is a great tool for demanding situations, for demanding photographers, for uncompromising photographers, for things that require nailing your metering. And the experience I had with 35 millimeter and also with the 500 series, the 503 CW, is I mostly use center weighted average metering. But I found what I kept doing is I would have my metering aiming at the subject, knowing that that's going to be 25% of what it will take as the meter reading, and then it would account in the matrix for whatever else was in the scene, and put that together and offer a meter reading. So that's good for general subjects, but there are situations where the light is uneven. You don't have an evenly lit enough subject area or background or foreground, and that's not always reliable. So with more experience, photographers tend to know they want to meter off of this part of what's in my frame. I want to meter off of this part. And actually experienced photographers know that pretty much right away. And I kept moving the camera around with other systems, trying to figure out, okay, what's going to be the metering? And I was wasting a lot of time doing that when I knew, okay, I've got my composition, I just want to take the picture. So the solution was simple for me, which was I like to use spot metering, and I pretty much wanted to spot meter all the time. Even within frames where center weighted average metering would be fine, I could always find a spot that would be like, I want to meter off of that thing. Fairly simple. So, but that is not for everybody. This camera was built between around 1995 to 2004. And 2004 was the last year the camera was made, and this camera was, I believe, was made in 2004. So I did get one of the last ones, and I bought it in 2004, planning, I'd been interested in it for about 2 or 3 years. And I knew that it was going to be discontinued. I received a heads up and knew from Hasselblad that this was not going to be made any longer. And if I was going to get it, that was the time to get it. And I got it, and I'm really glad I did. So one other advantage I want to talk about that comes with the 200 series cameras and F and FE lenses that are only used for the 200 series cameras. The 500 series cameras can use the C or CF lenses or the CB lenses. The C lenses have the leaf shutter built in. The F lenses do not have a shutter built into the lens. So this offers another advantage. That advantage is less space is used up by what would be a shutter, so there's more space for glass. There's more space for the glass elements and groupings, and that allows more light to come in, and also for that light to be adjusted with all that glass to get to the film plane and provide higher quality. So that's basic light physics. You don't have to be a scientist to understand all of that. So this particular lens is special. This is the Planar FE 110 millimeter f2. So to give you a 35 millimeter equivalent in medium format, the 35 millimeter equivalent of a 50 millimeter lens is approximately an 80 millimeter lens. So that's the standard, it's hard to say box lens, but that's the standard first lens somebody would get in a medium format camera, a 6x6, 6x7, 645. So That's the 80 millimeter lens, to be equivalent to a 35 millimeters 50 millimeter lens. And a 50 millimeter lens, the 2.8 f-stop would be sort of the target f-stop to see that, hey, compare things to a 50 millimeter lens, a 2.8 f-stop. So the 80 millimeter lens I have on my 500 series camera is a 2.8. This is a 2. This is an f2. So that additional light coming in is a tremendous advantage to depth of field, among the other things. And I was even able to see this visibly just looking through it. So I loved that about this camera. So to really make this story meaningful and beyond just the mechanics and the metal and the specifics of the technical things and all the numbers, I think it's helpful to know who the camera is made for and why this camera. As I said, this story started for me months ago as far as telling the story in a video. But the story started for me as a photographer years ago. And the truth is that this is a specialized camera for someone who just really wants something very specific and demanding. And that is me. So what happened after 2004, there were some difficult things I went through in life, and was out of work, and my heart was still in film photography. I couldn't afford digital. The autofocus systems that Hasselblad offered and the digital backs at that point were too expensive. As new systems came online, I really couldn't afford them. I did have an opportunity to shoot with friends and other professionals with top-end Nikon and Canon systems, and I got to use the top end of those systems and really appreciated them and enjoyed the speed, the flexibility, there's a lot in there that's great. But film, and specifically this camera, is everything pretty much I compared everything to and want to shoot with. And then over the years, I found that this became even harder to shoot. About the last time I took pictures with this camera was about a decade ago, almost 10 years ago. And that's a really long time. And in that time, what was happening in photography were a lot of things. But my experience was that the 120 film, which is the size of the film for the system, was less and less available. And then Kodak announced, I think it was going to stop making film. And, that was almost shocking. And if I ever went to the film store, there was less and less film stock available. Camera stores are going out of business. Digital was growing. So the shift in that time, the boom in photography has been digital, clearly. Cell phones have become ubiquitous around the world, and a lot has changed, which we've seen. So the growth in digital is fantastic, and that deserves its own attention, but I really want to talk about film here. So what I noticed more recently in 2020 and this past year is that more film was available, and I was hearing more people were getting into film, and we're going back to some older cameras. So I found this kind of interesting. I saw more film available, and I got interested in possibly doing this video. So when I looked for other videos online, what I was seeing more were people that were digitally literate and used to the digital cameras and were experimenting with film, but really hadn't shot that much with film. I was seeing videos of people doing test shoots with Velvia, and testing a whole range of stops, like 6 or 7 stops with Velvia. Well, I could have just told you from film days, or that you really don't need to test more than 1.5, 2 or 3 stops, because the latitude of that film is very, very small. It's a very tight latitude film, positive film, slide film. And then other films have wider latitudes, three and a half, 4 stops, and it varied. So in film days, that was well known, but I see that knowledge is basically not common anymore, and that's why I am also making this video. That's the second reason. One, I want to share about the camera, but two, want to help bridge the gap in knowledge on what film offers. And the quality of film, especially if you're in medium format cameras, is phenomenal. It's always been phenomenal. It's been several things that people compare to. Many people would compare the quality of pictures to Velvia many times because the quality, the color rendering of Velvia was fantastic. And many people would also compare image quality to Hasselblad systems. So that's no surprise either. So here's the concept that I had of the video, and I was so excited about this. And the idea was, all right, I'm probably going to be a little rusty, so I'm going to start out with something simple and share some basics about the camera. So I thought I'll get one roll of film, and I will shoot a variety of subjects. I'll take one picture each of each subject, and I came up with a list of a few subjects. I never got up to the list of 12. I was, I think, at 5 to 7. And I'll shoot with Velvia. I'll show some, what the color looks like, and it'll just be fun, just a variety. So as I said, there were many technical challenges. So the first challenge was finding Velvia. So my local photography store doesn't sell Velvia, so that was the first hurdle there. There was then through the whole workflow, and let's just say from taking the picture to actually seeing it workflow, which is similar in digital, and take the picture to actually print it and have it finalized in post, was impacted right away. I couldn't find Velvia. There was another slide film, but I hadn't used it, and so I just thought, well, I'll just use a film I know. So I picked Kodak Porta 400, and 400 because it would have enough ISO there that I could shoot in lighter or darker situations, and I didn't want to go with just 100, and I know the quality is really good. So okay, then another lab challenge was develop the film, but they don't do proofs. There are no more prints offered, no 5x5s as used to be. So one thing that was offered is scanning those images to a slide and giving me the images on a disc. Okay, great. So I thought, let's do that, and we did. And what happened is another delay, which is basically that store had to send it to their second store, which is another lab that does the scanning, and then it comes back. So that's another week in delay. Okay, no problem. I understood. We'll do it. Well, the hardest challenge ended up being beyond that. It was actually my camera itself, and mainly probably because I hadn't taken pictures with it for years. So I started having some camera issues. So I'll talk about that in one moment. So trying to think of what other delays that were there. All right, those are the main delays. Okay, the concept of the pictures that I wanted to show. Like I said, I was going to keep it super simple. Just take one subject each picture. So I started creating my list of things, started storyboarding details out, and I decided I was just going to pick, for each picture, I was going to pick a primary color, mainly. It was just going to be one color that was going to be the focus of that picture, whatever the subject was. So I started to think about the different colors that I wanted to pick, and also had the idea to just shoot a couple of portraits, one of a man, one of a woman, and I'll just, spoiler alert, I never got to that. That just never happened. So, okay, technical problems. Let's get to it. So this just kept getting harder. So For yellow, for the first picture I had in mind, I had picked a sunflower, and that was sort of like a, I know, it's a sunflower. It's probably classical. It's overdone. But it's yellow, and people know that color, and they can compare it to other sunflowers they know. So that was the big advantage of doing the sunflower. So with these pictures, I really just wanted to highlight simplicity and color, and just, you know, let everybody just kind of see that. I was not trying to get perfect pictures. And again, look, it's been about a decade since I pulled the camera out. So the technical problems I had with the camera, once I finally did find a sunflower, which I will talk more about in another video, and I took the picture, the camera jammed. And I didn't know what happened. Long story short, I got it to clear, but I lost one frame right there. And then second image, came back to the sunflower a couple hours later. It jammed again. So I don't know exactly what happened, but in the research that I did, some other Hasselblad owners of 200 series cameras, the ones with the focal plane shutters, said that if you haven't used the camera in a long time, you have to fire it a few times to kind of warm it up. And I found that kind of was true for me. So I had two film magazines, the thing on the back here. So I take the film magazine off that had the film in it, put an empty film magazine on, dry fire the camera a few times at varying shutter speeds, and cranked it if it jammed by doing the double exposure, winding the crank thing, press the button and wind the crank technique that I read about. And that seemed to work. That seemed to warm up the camera, warm up the shutters, so the curtains would move. But it wasn't always consistently that reliable. So pretty much before every picture I took, I was using that technique. So I want everybody to be aware of that. And that's not an inherent problem with the camera system itself. It's probably because I just let it sit around for a decade. So I hope you didn't do that if you have the system. So, oh, I should have said this before, but this is not sponsored by Hasselblad. I don't feel I should need to say that. If anything is sponsored, I would tell you it's sponsored, but it's not sponsored by Hasselblad at all. So those are the technical problems I kept running into, and but slowly I started to get through the pictures, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show one picture in this video, and there are more details and there's more of a story with each of the other pictures, and I'll make a video on the others specifically. So this is going to be the longer video because I'm just laying the groundwork for what these videos are on the Hasselblad 205FCC. So okay, so once I finished getting all the pictures and getting them processed and seeing them, the results from the scan were okay for if you're just going to email somebody the picture, or you're just going to quickly do something fast with it. But it's not the quality that you would get from a 5x5 proof that we were able to get in the days when proofs were made as part of processing 120 film. So I'll show that, but that set me on another journey, another technical search, and looking for another lab to try to get another print. So that journey continued. So before I made any of the other videos I've made, I started working on this. Before I even had the YouTube channel, before I even had a YouTube channel name, before I even had an account for it, before I knew how to make a video, before I even had a video vlogging camera, before I had anything, I started on this. I started the ideas. I started writing them down. I started working them through. I think I started some of my pictures. Yes, I certainly started some of the pictures before I had made any videos. And the funny thing is, this is actually funny to look back in such a short amount of time now. But when I did my first and second photo shoot, I didn't understand enough about how to use the video camera to record what I had even storyboarded out for it. So what did I do is I went back to photography. I grabbed my Canon 5D Mark III, and I just took still pictures of the picture I'm going to show you of the camera in place. So I just took still pictures to kind of show how I was setting it up, because I didn't know how to run the video at the same time, and I may not have had a second tripod at the time. So it's just kind of funny to see how that had all gone. But I am going to make a single video about each of the other prints, and because the camera jammed, really about half the roll was lost. So even though I had 5 or 7 ideas and there were 12 frames, I never had 12 individual pictures planned, and so I ended up with kind of a number of ideas I had, and some were not what I had planned. And then lastly, I made a contact sheet at the end of all of this, and that'll be the last video I make in this little, I don't even know what to call it, a series, I guess. And in that contact sheet video, I will wrap up a lot of thoughts. So this is the first video, so the introduction is a little bit longer. Thank you for bearing through with it. And I'm going to space out the videos about 1 week apart. And the reason for that is I want to have a chance to dialogue in the comments with you. So I know there are a few people who will be willing to do that, and I thank you in advance, because that will help me in when I present the other pictures, what I talk about. So I had hoped that I was going to make a single video that will have all the pictures and just be able to show everybody, and then everyone just say, hey, yes, this is the best camera in the world, Tariq. Congratulations that you were smart enough to get it back in 2004. And where can we buy one? Yeah, so, that totally did not happen that way at all. And when I finally got everything I needed, which is about a week ago, I realized, boy, I have to tell the story in an entirely different way, because so much has changed since this began, and how do I tell the story? So, so I had to just think for a few days on how do I tell the story. But I've kept you in mind the whole time. Sure, I'm sharing what I love, my passion, but there are really 2 goals with this whole video. 1, to tell you about the camera, and 2, to just tell everybody, show everybody how important film is today. How important film in photography is today. And when I wrap it up in the contact sheet thing, I'm going to be asking you to see what we can do together with film today and going forward. The reality of how we got to digital are a lot of advancements. The main ones at a high level are going to be economic and convenience. The economy of digital is very understandable. You can get a picture very fast, you can turn it around, you can process it, and you can present it. That speeds up the business cycle rapidly. And that goes into the second one, convenience. Again, they go together. The convenience of it. There are excellent digital cameras out there. Excellent digital cameras. And as some of you know, if you've been watching me for a little while, I have the Hasselblad 205X. And the only reason I got the Hasselblad 907X is because I had this camera and the other camera, and I wanted the digital back to put on this. And in the past, I would not have been able to afford Hasselblad's digital backs. So I was waiting for the quality. I was waiting for Hasselblad to catch up to where I was as a photographer. I couldn't afford the $30,000 cameras. I couldn't afford the $14,000 backs when they cost around that amount. I don't remember. Once to 5 digits. It's out of my budget. And I'm not saying that this is within my budget or whatever, but yes, I have some of these systems. So I was waiting. I didn't quit photography. I felt like photography moved in a direction, and I was waiting for it to catch up in quality to where I could pick up again. And that came this year. And I'm going to say something to younger photographers that I want you to really understand. And I hope you're watching. I hope you're inspired by this, and I hope you're motivated. First of all, you're doing great work. Keep it up. Every experienced photographer I know that used to shoot with film, and especially if they shot with a medium format, every one of them, without exception, that I've talked to, when we talk about whatever cameras they're using, and they talk about their medium format camera or their Hasselblad or Mamiya or Pentax, whatever they had, they all pause and they all stop and they go back to a place in their hearts where they're inspired, and they say, I miss my film camera, whatever that film camera is. I love that. And then as another dear friend of mine, a pro photographer, said, I love it. And this was a conversation we had just, I don't know how many years ago, but he said, yes, digital is fast, it's convenient, customers want it, we turn it around. What I'm concerned about for photography, if experience and knowledge is lost on film, is that we lose a really high quality aspect of photography. But as I've experienced and seen with film coming back in many ways, that quality is still available right now. That quality is still available right now. And we're in a really great place where we have a high quality film and digital. This is a good place. And one thing I want to ask creatives to do is, in these coming weeks, 2020 has been a hard year, is please use your photography to lift others up. Please try to use something in what you're doing, if you can, to lift others up. Because right now, people need a dream. People need to be inspired. People need to believe there's something beyond what this year has been a rough year for a lot of people. Today is December 24th, 2020. And this is also the anniversary of the Earthrise picture from Hasselblad. I received an email from them on a standard emailing list that on the Apollo 8 mission back in 1968, that was the picture of the Earthrise picture. So if you're not a photographer, you have seen this Earthrise picture. It is one of the most downloaded pictures in the world to date, taken with a Hasselblad, I might add. Film is very important, and I'm gonna share one picture, share a couple versions of it, and we'll continue this journey and this conversation. I know this was long, but if you care enough and you're listening this far in, thank you very much. I hope this will inspire you to think about film, and I will wrap up my thoughts. I so want to actually start talking about some of these things right now, but I'm going to try to wrap these up in the contact sheet list that will be the last video in this series. So this is roll 1, frame number 4, the silver elephant. So many more things I want to talk about, but thank you, and we're going to take a look at some pictures. Well, one picture. And okay, I thought I should tell you at least one thing about one of the shooting modes in the Hasselblad 205FCC. So the main shooting mode I use is the one that has the D on it. It's called diff. Basically, if you're a photographer, it is the equivalent of aperture priority. It's basically that. You set the aperture on the lens, on the ring, and if you have an FE lens that's got an electronic database bus that can talk to the camera body, it picks up the shutter speed. If not, you have to set the shutter speed on the lens. But the diff mode, you aim the metering, which is the center spot, to what you want to meter off of. 100% of the metering is off of that thing. It's very well shielded, so no other stray light's going to get in there. And that should be your 18%, your 19% gray. The diff, if you then move that spot around to anything else, it will give you a plus or minus in EV values that you're drifting from that space that you metered off of. And how you meter is the little red dot. So there's a little dial, it's got the different shooting modes on it. The red button in the center, you press it in when you've found your subject that you want to meter off of, and that's the equivalent of AE lock. So you press the button in, that'll trigger the metering system, and then when you release it, that's when it locks in the light value, the EV value, and it keeps it in memory. And it'll keep it in memory until you change it or remove the battery. So it's simple. So that's the one shooting mode I shoot in. The others, maybe we can talk about later, but it's very convenient. And here's an incredible thing about the metering beyond the spot meter. The meter reading on this camera is down to 1/12 of a stop. 1/12. Not 1/2, not 1/3, not 1/4, not 1/6, not 1/8, not 1/10. It is 1/12. That is extremely precise. And I know even with my Hasselblad 503CW, where I had a prism finder that had a center weighted average meter, I would be off sometimes by one stop, a whole stop. But something so precise as 1/12 of an EV is incredible. It also goes to 1/2000th of a shutter speed. Okay, so that was enough technically. So I thought I just owed you at least something about the camera. It's not an unboxing, but there it is. Okay. Take a look at the depth of field in this picture I'm going to share. And yeah, I don't mind asking if you know another lens in another system that'll give you that same depth of field, but it's pretty cool. So we'll take a look. This is the picture that I got back from the first lab, where they had the most basic services, where they develop the negatives and then they send it off to their second store to process and scan the images. It was on like a flatbed scanner. And so here's the image. And what I can say that I like about it is, look at the depth of field. You can't see anything behind the coin. I focused at close to about a meter, about 3 feet, and had it at f2. You can't see anything behind the coin, and everything in the foreground is blurred out pretty well. And even the little towel and the little bow tie are not in focus. It's a very tight depth of field, depth of focus, whichever you prefer to call it. So obviously in this picture, the color I'm highlighting is silver, and yes, that is a real silver coin. It's a 1 kilo coin, and I picked silver because it's a color that people would know around the world. The color silver is known and seen pretty much around the world, so you could evaluate it. So that's roll 1, frame 4. So I did get the picture, but I wanted something more than what I had here. So I found another lab and had another print made. And here's a metallic print. It's 16 inches by 16 inches, and I don't have a frame, so I'm just kind of holding it up as best I can in front of some double black velvet and a couple of lights. So it's not going to look entirely flat, but I hope you can see this is a real print made from a negative that came from a film camera. It's an actual print, and just take it in. I think seeing real prints is very helpful. I hope you'll agree. So there it is. Well, thank you everybody for watching. I really appreciate it. I wanted to tell this story for several months, and the ideas I had to change a lot before I could get here. The story has really changed entirely from the beginning. The few things that didn't change it is the Hasselblad 205FCC is a film camera. The pictures you are seeing are film pictures. And I stay true at least to the theme of picking a primary color for each picture. So that stayed true, and I'm glad those things did, even with all the technical challenges with the camera itself, jamming when it did, with the processing and trying to get the prints, and trying to figure out how to tell the story when it was no longer going to be the way I originally planned. And then had to just figure out another way to share all of this. And to be fair, I thought spreading it out over a few videos would be best. So hope to see you next time. We'll continue talking about the next frame in the roll. All right, take care everybody. See you around the new year.